Well, it was quite a week for Detroit sports as Tigers spring training rolls on. The Waynes end up having a controversial Stadium Series loss against Columbus, where ref puck continued to reign supreme once again. Damn, it's been a while since we had a ref puck incident. And the Pistons continue on winning and trying to get closer to Indiana and Milwaukee for that 4th spot in the Eastern Conference. As it always feels like February is the dead zone for sports overall. But with February ending and now heading into March, we're finally going to get out of dead zone and get started to warm up, because sports in March is when things start to turn up a bit. But anyway, let's see how Detroit sports fared this week. So starting off, not much to see here. It was a pretty off week for the Tigers. The week started off with their spring training game against Toronto being canceled due to inclement weather. Well, that's what happens when you play baseball in Florida in an outdoor stadium. Especially when weather in Florida is unpredictable as all hell. And then the Tigers had a bunch of losses before wrapping the week up with a win against Philly, 1-0 in a shutout. But yeah, you want to know how you know it's spring training? When you have a game like Tampa Bay where the game ends in a tie. Yes, ties in baseball still exist. Only in preseason / spring training. And honestly, they should be glad it's a spring training game, because if that was a regular season game, that game ain't ending in a tie. Because we'd be going to extra innings, because we keep playing until we have a winner. Like, can you imagine if we actually had a tie in a regular season of baseball? Man, that would be ludicrous. But yeah, of course, like I mentioned before, I really don't care about wins and losses in preseason. And it's more just player evaluation and testing and tuning and getting all warmed up for the regular season. But yeah, the Tigers had a pretty promising week in spite of those losses and that one tie against Tampa Bay. But yeah, not much else to say here in Detroit. Honestly, for terms of me caring about Tigers baseball, wake me up when it's time to play San Francisco to open the season. Now we turn to the Red Wings, where the Wings started the week off pretty strong, getting a big win in Minnesota against the Wild, getting revenge on Minnesota, beating the Wild. So that was a good win to see. So yeah, Minnesota don't get no sleep on Detroit this time. The broom gets snapped in half. And Detroit gets the dunk on Minnesota again. This time in Minnesota's house. Ha 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 ha. And there was no controversial body check this time for all those Minnesota crybabies to cry over. All I see in Minnesota fans says, hey, Alex DeBrincat did nothing wrong, and Kirby Joseph did nothing wrong. Both were clean hits. Go cry to a brick wall. And then the week got turned upside down with the home and home against Columbus. As the first game against Columbus, they had a pretty good shot against Columbus. As long as they didn't give Columbus any bulletin board material, they should be fine, and then the Waynes did. By bringing up the fact that Ohio State hasn't beaten Michigan in 1,916 days. Now 1,919 days as of this recording, since the day of this recording is on Sunday, March the 2nd. But it'll be categorized as the March 1st recap, because that's the last day Detroit sports teams played. In case you wonder why the date is on a certain date, there you go. But yeah, it's like, yeah, natty or not, they really had to bring that up, didn't they? Since Ohio State plays in Columbus. And well, the Blue Jackets took that about as well as you think. They completely beat the shit out of Detroit and beat them 5-2. Pretty embarrassing loss. But hey, the Waynes get a chance at payback, and it's a pretty good payback, because the second game in Columbus is the Stadium Series game at Ohio State Stadium. And of course, Dylan Larkin shows that the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry still reigns supreme, with Larkin taking jabs at the stadium, calling it the ugliest stadium he's ever been. Yeah, you can tell with Larkin the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry is still alive in him, that's for sure. Even with no football until the spring. Well, except for UFL, but honestly, who gives a fuck about the UFL? And of course, Ohio State fans are taking those comments about as well as you think. Natty or no natty. And well, we all know Ohio State fans are massive babies when it comes to Michigan. Especially since they're trying to make the flag planting illegal after what happened between Michigan and Ohio State last year. All I say to Ohio State fans is if you don't want Michigan to plant your flag, here's a tip. Fucking play better and actually win. Especially when you're 20.5-point favorites against Michigan. Like honestly, when you are 20.5-point favorites against your most hated rival and you lose, you deserve to have the flag planted in your center field. Now fuck off and actually beat them on the field, not in the fucking courtroom. And before Ohio State fans come in the comments and complain about this, here's a question. Didn't you all do the same thing at Michigan back when you used to beat the shit out of Michigan back in the day? Hell, I even remember a time when you ripped the banner down at Ann Arbor. But let's ignore that though, since that doesn't fit Ohio State fans' narratives. And hell, before Ohio State fans continue to complain on and be like, oh, if roles were reversed, you would have cried about it. Let me give you a little history lesson, Ohio State fans. This year, Texas and Oregon both planted their flags in the center field in Ann Arbor at Michigan this year. Michigan didn't try and fight both teams on either occasion. Because Michigan has enough common sense to know, hey, if we don't want them to plant the flag in our house at center field, at midfield, then maybe we should play better and not put ourselves in that position where they could do that. But sadly, I guess they don't teach common sense at Ohio State. Especially when Ohio State's trying to beat Michigan in the courtroom and not on the football field. So yeah, Ohio State, if you really want to send a message to Michigan, how about you actually beat them on the football field instead of trying to beat them in a courtroom? Fucking pussies. Anyway, to the game against Columbus at Ohio State Stadium. Well, Columbus, they got out to a 3-1 lead early. And then Detroit would rally back to go tied up at 3-3. And then Columbus would get the game-winning goal with about 3 minutes left. Although that goal should not have counted because we have ref puck. Where Simon Edmondson, where the refs missed a Wayne high stick to the face, which was on the game-winning goal. That should have been a 2-minute penalty, but no penalty was called. Ohio State won, and then Ohio State added a 5th goal to win it 5-3. I'll be honest here, the Waynes honestly did not deserve to win this game against Columbus. They played like ass. Even before the ref puck happened, they played like ass. I am not going to blame the refs for a loss, unless it's actually warranted. This case, it is not. the Waynes though, it's not the refs' fault the Waynes were in a 3-1 hole to start this game. It's the Waynes' own goddamn fault. Hell, do you see Todd McClellan go around blame the refs? Fuck no, he holds the actual right people accountable. He even held Larkin accountable after what happened in Detroit against Columbus Thursday. Alright, it's Detroit's own goddamn fault. I mean, you can blame the refs all you want and say the NFL is rigging it to try and get Columbus in because of the story with Johnny Gaudreau's death in the offseason. You can make those theories all you want. Bottom line is, Detroit had 60 minutes to not put themselves in a position where the refs could dictate the outcome of this Stadium Series game. And Detroit didn't take advantage of it. Yes, that missed high stick was complete fucking bullshit. That goal should not have counted. But bottom line is, the Waynes did not deserve to win this game. Especially when Cam Talbot is only stopping 80% of the shots he's taking. Like, you're not going to win many games when you have a save percentage of 800. Even sucks, too, in that Stadium Series game, because Detroit really outplayed him and outshot him by, like, nearly 30 shots on Columbus. And they still lost. But Detroit played like ass and dug themselves in a fucking hole early. They did not deserve to win this game. And in terms of this, and now Detroit falls to the final wildcard spot, only 2 points to the good ahead of Ottawa and Boston. And then you got Montreal, the New York Rangers, Philadelphia, and the Islanders not that far behind. It's going to be an absolute dogfight this last month and a half, especially with the trade deadline coming up this week. And the Waynes have the toughest strength of schedule remaining. And keep in mind, the Waynes were in this position a year ago. And then and we all know what happened. This time, Larkin isn't injured. He's healthy this time. Which means this time, and Derek Malone is no longer here. So that means this time, there's no more excuses to miss the playoffs. It's either make it in, or fuck off. And if the Waynes don't make it in, then the Waynes may end up losing that, may end up becoming the worst sports team in Detroit. Especially considering the Pistons are actually doing their job and the Pistons might actually make it in the playoffs this year.
Detroit basketball!
But what a leadway right into the Pistons segment of this video. Man, how did I really plan all that? I sure did. But yeah, the Pistons, of course, entered this week on a 7-game winning streak as somebody's letting the Pistons get hot. As, of course, the week started off with one of their toughest games on the schedule against Boston. And the Pistons did the unthinkable. It was a dogfight the first part of the game. But then the fourth quarter, the Pistons would pull away from the Celtics and would effectively give Boston belt to ass in the fourth quarter. Something you'd think you'd never see in the year 2025. But Detroit gave Boston belt to ass and beat the Celtics by 20 to extend the winning streak to 8 straight games. Keep this in mind, this is the Pistons' first 8-game winning streak since 2008. And keep this in mind, the last time the Pistons won this many games in a row in a season, Pistons not only went on to win a playoff game, they actually went on to win a playoff series that same season. And also the last time the Pistons won this many games in a row, the Red Wings went on to win a Stanley Cup that same season. And yes, this is the 2008 Stanley Cup reign. I decided to pull it out just for this winning streak. Let's put that to the side there and let's continue on. But then the Pistons would get their next big test Friday with the Denver Nuggets. I mean, that Boston win's a big win because that's the number 2 team in the Eastern Conference. And that's the reigning NBA champions, and they just knocked them off. So that's a big win for momentum. To where it could give you confidence going in. To where, hey, if the Pistons end up matching well with a team like Boston in the playoffs, they could upset it. They could upset them and go deep in the playoffs under the right circumstances. But anyway, now to the game against Denver, and this game is where the winning streak would end at 8 games as Denver completely beat the shit out of Detroit. And I'll be honest, the Denver game, I was not confident going into that game against the Nuggets. Like, I knew the Pistons were going to lose that game to the Nuggets, especially with Nikola Jokic. He's averaging a 50-50 chance at a triple-double almost every night. Jesus Christ, he has nearly 28 triple-doubles in 60 games. That's nearly 50-50 odds. Fuck me. Like, honestly, that should make Nikola Jokic the fucking rough front-runner for MVP this season. I mean, he should be the front-runner for MVP when you're averaging a triple-double on a 50-50 chance every night. While Kate is tied for second most with LeBron at like 10, with just like a 1-in-6 chance nearly every night. Like, honestly, if I was doing MVP ratings this year, at this point in the year, I would have Jokic as my number 1 choice for MVP this year. But Jokic has really been him all year. And the game against Denver, that was easily Cade Cunningham's worst game of the season he's had all year. Like, the only positive from that game was Cade Cunningham's dunk when he posted a Denver player and sent him straight to the Shadow Realm. That's sadly the only positive really to come out of that game, and that's where they about all end. But hey, the Pistons, they're so far ahead in terms of that 6th spot to where, hey, they had a mulligan they could play with at some point. They could cash in, so the Pistons chose the Denver game to cash in their mulligan. So yeah, they're still well ahead in terms of that race for the 6th spot to stay in the top 6 ahead of Miami. So the Pistons, hey, they were due for a bad game at some point, and hey, I'm not really pissed about the Denver game, You know what happens, you're going to have good games, you're going to have bad games. This was just a bad game. Especially when you've won 8 in a row. But the Pistons, though, they were able to bounce back and they hammered Brooklyn to kill Brooklyn's odds of possibly getting into the top 10 to make the play-in tournament. As they completely hammered the fuck out of Brooklyn and gave them the belt to ass. So yeah, whatever anger they had from the Denver game, they took it out on Brooklyn. Even though the Pistons had a bad third quarter and Brooklyn was able to get back in it, the Pistons were able to pull away in the fourth quarter to win handily over the Brooklyn Nets and giving Brooklyn belt to ass. So after losing to Denver, they didn't stay down long, and they get right back at it. Also, we had another dunk where it was Jalen Duren this time sending the Brooklyn player straight to the Shadow Realm. Damn, usually it's the Pistons players that get sent to the Shadow Realm when someone dunks on them. Now Pistons are doing it to them. That's how you know the Pistons are legit and they are a contender. mean, for fuck's sakes, they hammered the fuck out of Boston. I mean, out of the top 3 teams in the East, the only one they haven't knocked off yet is Cleveland. But they've been close to knocking off Cleveland. They've been in some dogfights with Cleveland. They have just fallen short against the Cavs. If they can knock off the Cavs, then the Pistons could really do some damage in the playoffs under the right circumstances. But yeah, Pistons get the win. Cade continues to be him, but the I in him is replaced with a 2. And of course, with the win, the Pistons still remain 6th in the Eastern Conference, but they're now 3.5 games ahead of Miami for 6 to stay in the top 6. And keep this in mind in terms of standings. The Pistons are only 1 game behind Milwaukee for 4th in the Eastern Conference. I don't know if they can get the 3rd. They're 6 games behind the Knicks for 3rd. I don't think they can get to 3rd with the Knicks. I think they're too far behind the Knicks to get the 3rd. They definitely can't get to Cleveland. They're way too far behind Cleveland. Getting the 1st and knocking off Cleveland, that won't happen. That will not happen. You know, I think definitely they can pass Indiana and Milwaukee, but Knicks, that's a stretch, and same deal with Boston. I mean, it's very possible they could possibly pass Boston and the Knicks, but they would need a lot of help to go their way for that to happen. But yeah, it's going to be a very interesting last month and a half as we're getting close to the home stretch. We're entering the last 20 games of the season. 20 or so games of the season. The sprint to the finish line to see who will be locked into the top 6. Who will be relegated to the stupid play-in tournament. And who will be sentenced to the draft lottery. But regardless of where everyone's fate is, every team still has one goal left in mind. Don't get eliminated. See you all next week.